I used to believe our marriage was unshakable. Sarah and I had been together for 11 years, building a life that felt as sturdy as the house we owned, raising our two kids and navigating the ups and downs of life like a team. We weren't the type to have big fights. Any disagreements were handled with a conversation, maybe a few cold shoulders here and there, but nothing serious. Our life was predictable, comforting even, and I liked it that way, until everything changed. Sarah had started working for the tech company about 5 years ago, and at first it was just supposed to be a part-time gig to bring in some extra money while the kids were in school. But the company was growing fast, and she got in good with her boss, Steve. He seemed like a decent guy whenever we met at company events. Mid-40s, clean-cut, a bit intense, but nothing that threw up red flags. Sarah spoke highly of him, and I was happy she had found a place where she felt valued. Then about a year ago, Sarah started putting in longer hours. It wasn't unusual in her line of work. She was climbing the ranks, and with that came more responsibility. She talked about how much she wanted the deputy position that had opened up at her company. It came with a significant pay raise, more influence, and according to her, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I supported her, of course. We talked about how the extra money would help with the kids' college savings, how it would give us more breathing room financially. We could even start thinking about that vacation we kept putting off. But as time went on, something shifted. Sarah became distant, not just physically with all the late nights and business trips, but emotionally too. We used to have these long talks after the kids went to bed, just us, unwinding from the day. Lately, though, she seemed preoccupied, like she was always somewhere else in her head. I chalked it up to stress. She was under a lot of pressure at work, and I figured once she got the promotion, things would calm down. But they didn't. If anything, they got worse. The first real warning sign came one night when she was working late. Again. I was putting the kids to bed when her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It wasn't my habit to check her messages, but I was curious. She'd been working nonstop, and I figured it might be something about a project or another late-night meeting. But the message wasn't from a coworker, at least not in the way I expected. It was from Steve, and it wasn't about work. "Miss you already. Can't wait for our next night together." My stomach dropped. For a second, I thought I was seeing things, that maybe it was a joke or some weird work-related code I didn't understand. But when I opened the thread and scrolled through their conversation, it became painfully clear that this was no misunderstanding. There were messages, dozens of them, going back weeks, maybe even months. Flirty exchanges, plans to meet at hotels, private dinners that weren't on any business schedule I'd ever seen. They weren't explicit, but they didn't have to be. The undertone was clear. This wasn't just some harmless work flirtation. My wife was having an affair. I stood there staring at the phone, feeling like the ground had opened up beneath me. The woman I had built a life with, the mother of my children, was cheating on me. Not just with anyone, but with her boss. And for what? A promotion? I felt a rush of anger, confusion, betrayal, all hitting me at once. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to demand answers, but mostly I just felt hollow. How could this have happened? How could she have done this to us, to our family? I thought we had a good marriage. I thought we were solid. That night I didn't confront her. I didn't know how to. Instead, I stayed up late, pacing the living room, trying to make sense of it all. My mind raced through 1,000 questions. How long had this been going on? Was I just some oblivious fool? And what the hell was I supposed to do now? Divorce was the first thing that came to mind. How could I stay with someone who had betrayed me so deeply, who had risked everything we'd built for the sake of her career? But then I thought about the kids, about how their lives would be torn apart if I left, about how much I still loved Sarah, despite what she'd done. I didn't know what to do. All I knew was that our marriage, our life, would never be the same. The next few days were a blur. Every time I looked at Sarah, I saw the messages in my mind, felt the weight of her betrayal gnawing at me. I went through the motions, getting the kids ready for school, going to work, coming home, but my thoughts were consumed with the affair. I couldn't stop replaying every moment in my head, every late-night meeting, every business trip that suddenly made sense. It was like I was watching our marriage unravel in real time, and I couldn't do a damn thing about it. I didn't confront her right away. I needed time to think, to decide how to handle this. A part of me wanted to scream at her, throw her phone in her face, demand to know why she had done this. But another part of me, The part that had loved her for over a decade was still holding out for some kind of explanation. Some reason that would make this hurt a little less. The breaking point came one Saturday morning, about a week after I'd found the messages. Sarah was getting ready to head out for another one of her meetings, and something in me snapped. I couldn't keep pretending everything was normal. I couldn't keep holding this in. "Sarah," I called from the kitchen as she grabbed her purse. "We need to talk." She paused, glancing over at me, a slight frown on her face. "Can it wait? I'm running late for—" "No, it can't," I interrupted, my voice firmer than I expected. "We need to talk now." Her frown deepened, and she walked over, her posture stiff. "Okay, what's going on?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but there was no easy way to say it. "I know about you and Steve." For a moment, her expression didn't change. It was like she didn't understand what I was saying. But then the color drained from her face, and she took a step back, her eyes wide. "What? What do you mean?" she stammered. "I saw the messages," I said, my voice low but steady. "I know you've been meeting with him, not for work, but for whatever the hell this is. I know you've been cheating on me, Sarah." Her hands flew to her mouth and she sank into the chair at the table, her eyes welling with tears. "Oh my God," she whispered. I can't explain. It's not what you think. Not what I think." I laughed bitterly, my anger bubbling up to the surface. "I saw the messages, Sarah. You were sleeping with him. You're having an affair with your boss, and you want to tell me it's not what I think?" Tears spilled down her cheeks and she shook her head frantically. "I didn't mean for it to happen, Jake. I swear. It, it just happened. Steve, he pressured me and I was so focused on getting that promotion, I lost sight of what mattered." I stared at her, disbelief and rage swirling inside me. "So you're saying you did this for a promotion? You're telling me that screwing your boss was worth throwing away our marriage?" She sobbed harder, burying her face in her hands. "I don't know what I was thinking. I was so desperate. I wanted to help our family. I wanted to get that position so I could bring in more money. And I just, I didn't know how to say no." My heart pounded in my chest, my hands shaking as I tried to process what she was saying. "You've been lying to me for months. How could you think this would help us? You destroyed everything. You betrayed me, Sarah." "I know," she cried, her voice broken. "I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But please, Jake, please don't leave me. I'll quit my job. I'll do anything. Just please don't end our marriage." The room fell silent, her sobs the only sound breaking through the thick tension between us. I wanted to shout, to throw something, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling, but I couldn't move. I just stood there, staring at the woman I had loved for over a decade, wondering how we had ended up here. Finally, I spoke, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you just talk to me? Why didn't you come to me when things were getting tough?" "I don't know," she whispered, wiping her tears. "I was scared. I was afraid of disappointing you, of not being good enough. And Steve, he made it seem like this was the only way. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if there was anything left to say. My whole world had come crashing down around me, and now Sarah was sitting here, begging me to forgive her. Divorce had been the first thought in my mind when I found out. How could I stay with someone who had betrayed me so deeply? But now, standing in front of her, watching her fall apart, I wasn't sure anymore. "I need time," I said quietly. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if we can come back from this." Sarah nodded, her eyes red and swollen. "I understand. Take all the time you need. I'll do whatever it takes, Jake. I love you. I never stopped loving you." I turned away, unable to look at her any longer. I didn't know if love was enough to fix this, but I wasn't ready to throw away 11 years of marriage just yet. Not until I was sure. I walked out of the house that day, leaving her sobbing at the kitchen table, and went for a long drive. I had no idea where I was headed, but I knew one thing. My life would never be the same. The days following my confrontation with Sarah were some of the hardest I'd ever experienced. I stayed with a friend for a while, trying to clear my head, trying to make sense of everything. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, sobbing at the kitchen table, begging for forgiveness, but also standing with Steve in some hotel room, betraying the trust we'd built over more than a decade. It was like two different versions of her were fighting for space in my mind, and I couldn't reconcile the two. Divorce seemed like the only logical option. Every time I thought about going back, my gut twisted in knots. How could I stay with her after what she'd done? Every time she was late coming home, every business trip, every phone call, I'd wonder if it was happening again. The betrayal would always be there, lurking beneath the surface. But then there were the kids. They didn't know what had happened, of course. I wasn't going to drag them into this mess, not yet. To them, their world was still the same. Mom and Dad were just having a bit of time apart because Dad needed to help a friend. They didn't understand the magnitude of what was going on, and I hated the thought of turning their lives upside down because of Sarah's mistakes. I couldn't stop thinking about what a divorce would mean for them. The custody battles, the splitting of holidays, the awkward handoffs between two houses. Would they blame me? Would they think I hadn't tried hard enough to keep our family together? And what would happen to them emotionally growing up knowing their parents couldn't make it work? These thoughts tortured me. Every time I came close to calling my lawyer, I hesitated, thinking of the two little faces that depended on me to make the right decision. It wasn't just about me anymore. So one day I decided to go home. I wasn't sure what would happen when I walked through that door, but I needed to see if there was anything left to save. When I got back, the house was eerily quiet. Sarah had texted me earlier, saying she had taken the kids to her mom's for the weekend, giving me space to come home and figure things out. It was thoughtful of her, I suppose, but it didn't change the fact that I was still furious, still hurt. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, sitting at the same table where we had faced each other during that first confrontation. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were puffy, and her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, a stark contrast to the polished, put-together woman I'd always known. "Jake," she said softly when she saw me, her voice trembling. "I didn't know if you were going to come back." I didn't respond right away. I just stood there, feeling the weight of the moment, unsure of what to say. The silence between us stretched on until I finally spoke. "I came back because I need answers," I said, my voice steady but my heart pounding in my chest. "I need to know why. I need to understand how you could throw everything away for a promotion." She nodded slowly, as if she had been expecting this. "I know I owe you that. I've been thinking about it every day since everything came out, and I wish I had a better answer, Jake. I really do. But the truth is, I was scared." "Scared of what?" I asked, my voice rising. "Of me? Of our marriage? Of us struggling? Because that's what couples do, Sarah. We talk about things. We don't just go behind each other's backs." "I was scared of failing," she said, tears forming in her eyes again. "I've never felt like I was good enough. Not at work, not as a mother, not as your wife. And when Steve offered me that promotion, he made it seem like it was the only way. I know that doesn't excuse anything. I know I was weak and I betrayed you. But I didn't do it because I stopped loving you. I did it because I thought I needed to prove something to myself. And to you." I shook my head, trying to grasp what she was saying. "Prove something to me? Sarah, I never once made you feel like you weren't enough. I never asked for more than you were already giving. All I wanted was for us to be happy, for us to take care of our kids, our family." "I know," she whispered. "I know you didn't. But I put that pressure on myself, and I made a terrible choice because of it." The rawness of her confession cut through my anger, but it didn't make the pain go away. It didn't change the fact that she had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But as I stood there looking at her, this broken, remorseful version of the woman I had once adored, I realized something. We were both broken. Our marriage was in pieces, yes, but maybe it had been cracking long before Steve entered the picture. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Sarah. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you again." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I understand. But if there's even a chance, Jake, I want to try. I want to make things right. For you, for our kids. I'll quit my job. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes." There it was again. That plea for me to stay, for us to fix this. And for the first time, I didn't dismiss it outright. Divorce was still on the table, still the easiest option in a lot of ways. But something in me, maybe the years we'd shared, maybe the kids, wasn't ready to give up just yet. Maybe we owed it to ourselves to try, to see if we could rebuild from the wreckage. "I'll stay," I said quietly, watching as her eyes filled with cautious hope. "But things are going to change. We're going to go to therapy, together and separately, and I need time. I need time to see if I can even start to forgive you." She nodded quickly, wiping her tears. "Of course. I'll give you all the time you need. I'll do anything to make this work, Jake." I swear I didn't respond. I couldn't. The road ahead was long, and I didn't know if we'd make it. But for now, I was choosing to try. I was choosing to stay. Not for her, and not because I was ready to forgive her, but because I needed to know for myself if there was anything left worth saving. And so I stayed. Not out of love, not out of obligation, but out of hope. The smallest, most fragile kind of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back.